It's horrible what they did to her.
No eyewitnesses, no forensic evidence, no physical evidence whatsoever connecting James Dailey to the crime.
It has been 34 years since a Tampa Bay teenager was murdered. Shelly Boggio's murder is known as one of the most violent crimes in Pinellas County's history. 2 men were convicted of her murder, but only one of them is sitting on death row. James Dailey. 10 News reporter Liz Crawford talked to Dailey's attorney, who says his client is innocent.
There's overwhelming evidence of his innocence.
Josh Dubin works for the Innocence Project. He's representing James Dailey, who's sitting on Florida's death row. He met Dailey Tuesday.
It was somber and it was emotional, and yet there's this interesting resilience and flicker of hope that the governor will listen and that the clemency board will listen.
Dailey and his friend Jack Percy were found guilty for the 1985 murder of 14-year-old Shelly Boggio. She was beaten, choked, stabbed more than 30 times, and held underwater until she drowned. 10 News spoke to the man who found her body in 1985.
I really didn't know for sure until the police, the officers, patrolmen went over there. And then when the body was pulled up on the bank, you could see blood coming from the neck.
Was the body clothed?
No.
Pearcy was sentenced to life in prison. Dailey, who is now 73 years old, was sentenced to death. But now, 3 decades later, Pearcy admits he acted alone in killing Boggio.
He has said in no uncertain terms, in a sworn affidavit, James Dailey had nothing to do with this.
But he didn't say that in 1985, 86, 87.
Correct. This didn't happen until a few years ago that he finally came clean.
Boggio's family doesn't buy it. Her cousin, Andrea Boggio, plans on traveling from Michigan to Florida if and when Dailey is executed.
It needs to end. We need justice. Her life needed to matter. She was only 14.
There was no eyewitnesses.
No eyewitnesses, no forensic evidence, no physical evidence whatsoever connecting James Dailey to the crime.
It was brutal. It was a brutal attack. She didn't have a chance to do anything with her life.
Now to an update in a First Coast News investigation into a murder case dating back to 1985. For 32 years, James Dailey has been on Florida's death row for a crime he says he did not commit. The 73-year-old Vietnam veteran was granted a delay in his execution when his attorneys presented new evidence back in October. But that delay just expired. On your side, Shelby Danielson has new details tonight as his fate could be decided any day now.
James Dailey is convicted for the murder of 14-year-old Shelly Boggio. However, another man has come forward saying he alone is the killer. The question now, will that man's confession be enough to turn this case around?
Nobody forgot. Nobody's going to forget.
Andrea Boggio is the cousin of murder victim Shelly Boggio. She made her feelings known to us back in October when Governor DeSantis had just issued a stay in execution for James Dailey to allow his newly appointed attorneys more time with the case.
It's not fair that this guy keeps getting chances.
She believed Dailey was guilty then, and she still believes that now, despite new evidence entered into court by Dailey's attorneys. According to court records, Dailey's attorney visited inmate Jack Percy at the Sumter Correctional Institution. Pearcy was also found guilty of Shelly Boggio's murder, but he was given life in prison instead of death. He has admitted to being the sole killer before. But on December 18th, he voluntarily signed another declaration claiming that he alone killed the young girl and that Dailey was not even involved. He elaborates in a statement that says in part, quote, "Dailey was back at the house when I drove Shelly Boggio to the place where I ultimately killed her." Organizations like the Innocence Project, Floridians for Alternatives to the Death Penalty, and Catholic dioceses across the state have come out in support of Dailey.
I believe he's innocent based on everything that I've been able to experience and to read. How are we going to be at peace if we have killed an innocent man?
Meanwhile, Andrea Boggio says the new developments have only caused her family more pain. She tells us, quote, "There is already so much loss. We are absolutely disgusted that this is still going on, and we are just ashamed of the state of Florida." The governor will either assign this case to a clemency board so they can review the 100 pages of new evidence, or he will assign a date for Dailey's execution.
It has been more than 3 decades since a Battle Creek teenager was brutally murdered in Florida. Now her killer may finally be executed.
A relative of the victim who still lives in Battle Creek is hoping the family's long-awaited justice is finally coming.
13 on your side's Brent Ashcroft has been following this controversial case. Recently spoke with that family member here in Michigan. He joins us now with more. Brent.
Shelly Boggio grew up in Battle Creek. She was only 14 when she died in 1985. 2 men were tried, convicted, sentenced, and imprisoned for killing her. One of them received the death penalty for it. But new evidence in the case is sparking attorneys to fight for exoneration, something a Boggio family member here in Michigan says would be an unconscionable development to a tragedy that's consumed her whole life.
34 years. That's all of my adult life.
The execution chamber, Florida State Prison.
We all thought that it would happen a lot sooner.
Andrea Boggio plans to fight through her fear.
I have never stepped foot in the state of Florida because I'm afraid I'm going to die.
Occupy one of these seats.
It's hurt too many people.
And watch.
It's not like he just hurt her, he murdered her.
As James Dailey is put to death for killing her cousin Shelly.
Her life needed to matter.
Shelly Boggio and her family moved from Battle Creek to Kenneth City, Florida in 1984. A year later, she found herself in the wrong place with the wrong people.
It's horrible what they did to her.
Her mutilated body was found along Indian Rocks Beach.
They stabbed her 31 times and drowned her.
Witnesses said Shelly was with 2 men that night, James Dailey and Jack Percy.
She was seen in a bar with them.
A knife belonging to Pearcy was found near Boggio's body, but when questioned by authorities, Pearcy implicated Dailey. Both men were tried and convicted of first-degree murder. Pearcy was sentenced to life. Dailey got death. No physical evidence or eyewitness testimony linked Dailey to the crime, but statements from 3 jailhouse informants did. He's been on Florida's death row since 1987. 2 years ago, new evidence surfaced that Dailey's attorneys say casts doubt on his guilt. A signed affidavit from Pearcy saying he alone was responsible for Shelly's murder. But when he testified in court about it, Pearcy invoked the Fifth Amendment.
How are we going to be at peace if we have killed an innocent man?
This development triggered some Florida groups to call for Dailey's exoneration.
I believe he's innocent based on everything that I've been able to experience and to read, but because I am a death row minister, I can't talk about that or analyze it, but I believe it.
There is something about this story that calls a more careful review.
Florida's governor signed Dailey's death warrant in September. Dailey immediately filed an appeal, which was later rejected by the Florida Supreme Court. His execution was scheduled for November 7th, but Dailey was awarded a temporary stay until December 30th because federal law allows 90 days for his new legal team to review the case.
It's not fair that this guy keeps getting chances.
The burden of waiting has fallen on Andrea.
It just keeps coming back.
And 3 of Shelly's half-sisters, because everybody from Shelly's immediate family is gone.
It's up to us members that are left to do this for them.
Is the state of Florida about to put an innocent man to death?
This is a gratuitous killing. It's not going to bring anybody back to life.
Will the Boggio family get what they believe is justice for Shelly?
He committed it.
If Dailey is finally strapped to this,
I don't have any pity for him at all, and I won't.
Andrea plans to travel from Battle Creek and be here to witness their 34-year nightmare.
An eye for an eye.
End.
Shelly isn't forgotten.
James Dailey's attorneys have until December 30th to make their appeals in court. They're trying to request a new trial so they can enter the new evidence, which includes witness testimony and Jack Percy's affidavit. Meantime, Andrea will continue to wait and hope that justice will ultimately come for Shelly and the few remaining members of the Boggio family.
She was born in 88. Why was she there? No.
Oh, let me get him in.
Phone number?
All rise. Circuit Court in Fort Pinellas County is now in session with the Honorable Pat Syracuse.
All right, those of us returning from lunch, let's make sure we turn our cell phones off, please. And who's your court reporter there? She is. We need a defendant, so we'll get a defendant. All right, we're back in state of Florida versus Dailey, and we've taken a hour and 15-minute lunch break. State is present, defense is present, the defendant is present and in custody. Do you need any time to talk to him, or are we ready to go?
Just need to put one thing on the record, Your Honor.
All right, well, then we must be ready to go. All right, what do you want to put on the record?
Yes, Your Honor. So we just wanted to clarify Pearcy's unavailability. I thought, and I could be wrong, that the state said because Pearcy's here, that means he's available.
He's not available.
Okay, so I agree with you, Your Honor, but I think the case law says that we have to, A, either have Mr. Pearcy come in here, Your Honor, order him to answer the question, and he refuses a direct order, or if the state wants to agree he's unavailable, then he's unavailable. But I don't think Your Honor technically ordered him to answer the question. I think you just said, next question, counselor, he's not going to answer. But if...
I asked him if he was going to... answer. I asked him, do I need to hold you in contempt? I did everything from try to intimidate him a little bit, tried to be courteous to him, did everything short of buying him flowers. He was told, cajoled, and asked. I even had his parents ask him, or his mom ask him to testify, so he's unavailable. State, you want me to order him to testify again, State?
I'm sorry if there was some confusion. I didn't mean that he was unavailable today. I meant for purposes of depositions in terms of unavailability, like the motion to perpetuate testimony, you have to show some unavailability in order to get that motion, and there was no unavailability prior to him coming in to be able to do a motion to perpetuate testimony.
Well, there was no motion to perpetuate testimony.
I know that, but that was my point. It was we couldn't get a motion to perpetuate before, Your Honor. There was no legal basis to do so because he wasn't unavailable until he actually sat down and said, I'm not going to testify.
Okay, but you would agree he's unavailable now?
Correct.
Okay.
I meant, like, for purposes of the motion to perpetuate, he would not have been unavailable.
Okay, all right. So I think everybody's position's clear. All right, great. Okay, so, look, I'll take your request to admit the deposition under advisement. For right now, I want to hear 1A. I want to hear how you're telling me that what I see in that deposition gets me to Pearcy has now testified that he acted alone and that Dailey didn't do it. So, sell me on why this meets 1A, please, Counselor.
Yes, Your Honor. And I hate to ask you to have courtroom technology come in, but part of my argument will involve me showing you something, but I can start without it.
All right, well, let's see what's going on. Did you already try and get it up on that screen?
Judge, while he's working on that, if we could just have a clarification as far as the procedure that you want to employ. You've asked him to point out how the information or the data or the facts in Mr. Pearcy's depot supports the claim of 1A.
Yes.
Do you want the state, as he goes through each one, to make their objection? Because I will tell you that 99% of all the documents and everything that was shown, there's a legal reason why they're not admissible. So how do you want to handle that? Do you want to wait till he's all done? Do you want to go line by line? There's numerous objections that if this was a depot to perpetuate, that normally that would have been done from the judge, and we could have the admissibility of certain documents that were shown to Mr. Pearcy. The other issue is that not the great majority, but there is voluminous amount of talking testimony by Mr. Dubin during the depot that if you were allowed it in, we would want excise, because that's not testimony either. So, I mean, there's a whole plethora of things that we could be objecting to. So how do you want to handle him going through, well, this proves whatever? Because we're going to be virtually objecting to everything. So how do you want to do it?
I'll allow you to have a continuing objection with the understanding that he's going to put in his entire presentation. You're going to put in your entire presentation. If necessary, I'll let him have one reply, and then I'll rule. All right?
But we really don't have a presentation. We just have objections to each one.
Okay.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, you're not going to want to answer what he's saying. You just want to object?
Yeah, because the documents and the things that he's going to offer as proof are not admissible.
Well, I'm not doing a cumulative. I'm doing right now how is this 1A? How does this...
Correct. So the only thing that he has, which he doesn't have, that supports 1A is Jack Percy's testimony. Since you don't have that, then what else supports 1A that doesn't go to items that were not previously litigated? We've already litigated everything else, innocence, all this other stuff. The only thing we're here on is Jack Percy's affidavit.
Your Honor, I
That's
disagree.
it.
Well, here, let me hear what he says 1A is. There you go, one up. Although you're getting that feedback for having the...
I'm going to take the sound off. Maybe that'll do it. Bingo.
Is it bingo? No, it's still...
Not
it's
bingo.
still... Yeah. Maybe you can have somebody assist you and turn the letters or something.
How about now? Hold on. No? All right.
Yeah, it creates feedback when you put it up there. Same thing with the cell phone turned on.
Your Honor, I actually not going to indulge the state's argument because I think you'll see in a moment why, with all respect, it doesn't make any sense.
I don't know. I'm waiting to hear your argument, then I'm going to hear their argument, and then I'm going to hear a brief reply, and then I'm going to rule. So
Your Honor,
your argument. Why is this?
We now have, for the first time, under oath, direct evidence of the only eyewitness available to this murder, Jack Percy, admitting that he and he alone was with the victim during the time frame that the state argued she was murdered. That has never been evidence in this case. It is now evidence in this case. There can be no more compelling evidence that certainly was not known at the time to counsel or the parties, and that would obviously produce an acquittal at trial, or at very minimum lead to a life sentence. This man has testified under oath in the deposition, and I asked him.
I don't see a page and line on there. Can you help me out with it? Because I got my copy right here.
It is page 22, lines 5 through 18, Your Honor. And he was asked by me, question, well, what happened when you left with, on the night of the murder, Shelly Boggio, when you left with, at one point, you take Oza Shaw to a payphone, correct? Answer, correct. Question, all right. Answer, 2 blocks away from the house. Question, all right. Answer, just drop them all. And critically, and I'm sorry, I apologize for giving the court my back. I'm just walking back and forth.
It's okay.
To the computer. Question, and who was with you at that point me? Answer, Shelly and Oza. Question, okay, was Jim with you? Answer, no. Jim stayed at the house to do something, him and Gail, my girl. And if it couldn't be any clearer, at page 66, line 14 through 65, line 5, I asked him again. Said, okay, before I move off this, I just want to be completely sure and put this to bed. James Dailey was not with you when you dropped Oza Shaw off at that payphone, right? Answer. Excuse me, that's what you say? Answer, you're correct. He wasn't with the house. He, Oza Shaw, has also testified. Question, who went with you? Answer, it was that girl. I think he got the pronunciation wrong. He said Boggio, dead girl. Answer right, Pearcy and I went to the phone. Now, the question becomes, when did he return back to the house? Because you're going to see in a moment, Your Honor, when he returns back to the house, Jack Percy is still out with Shelly Boggio by himself. He returns back to the house, and what he said was, right, he makes that first call at 1:15 for 26 minutes. He has testified, I'm sure I was on the phone over an hour and I walked back home then. That took 15 minutes. So if you say he was on the phone for an hour, 2:15, he walks back, 15 minutes, 2:30. Look at his testimony at Mr. Dailey's trial. He's asked by Miss Andrews, question, sir, you don't know what happened after you were left off at the payphone, do you? Answer, no, ma'am, I don't. Question, the next thing you know, you come home, Gail is sitting there mad because they all had left her. Answer, right. And why Gail is mad is because Jack Percy leaves the pregnant mother of his child while she's in the bathroom and leaves with Shelly Boggio. That's why she's mad. There's record evidence of that. So, you're going to see, Your Honor, that Jack Percy returns home, and it can be no question that when he returns home alone without Miss Boggio. And he was alone with her during that time period, and critically, during that time period, he is seen alone at Hank's bar. Miss Boggio is seen with one man, not two. And he returns home, and it all makes sense. His testimony now, on record, under oath for the first time, that he was alone with her. Now we know during this time frame.
Governor Ron DeSantis has signed a death warrant tonight for James Dailey. He was convicted of killing Shelly Boggio in 1985 near St. Petersburg after picking up the 14-year-old and her sister. That execution is set for November 7th at the Florida State Prison.